Hello, I can see you. Can you
Hi.
see me?
Yeah, I can see you. How are you?
Fine, how are you?
I'm doing good. Hold on. Let me move this mic.
Are you ready to start?
Yeah, we can start.
Okay, so maybe let's begin with an easy question about yourself. Could you tell our audience who you are and what you are doing?
Yes, my name is Dr. Mario Rocha. I am a psychotherapist from the United States, California. Um, and yeah, happy to be here.
So, do you want to begin with the questions, or maybe you have something else to say?
No, you can just introduce the topic and the questions. You can start.
Okay, so today we are talking about healthy relationships, what we understand about healthy relationships and what you know about it, right? Because you're a psychotherapist. So I'm going to ask some superficial questions about it. And maybe we begin with the question, what are the signs of healthy relationship?
Cool. I mean, there's a few indicators for healthy relationships that you want to look for. The biggest one is communication, right? Can you talk to each other? Even when there are problems. So some of the signs of being in a healthy relationship is that when there is a problem, you are able to turn to each other, not away from each other, right? So a lot of times when a relationship is having a lot of conflict, then when they get angry, they either communicate with being aggressive or they stop communicating, right? So signs of a healthy relationship is you continue to communicate even when you're having problems, right? Another sign is problems don't last long, right? So when there is a problem, because there's good communication, it only lasts for a short time, and then they're able to go back to being loving. They're able to go back to dating, intimacy, and stuff like that. Let's see. Another indication of a healthy relationship is they're willing to learn, right? You always got to be open to learn, open to understand yourself and your partner, right? You have to be willing to learn, be open to learn from other people who have healthy relationships, right? um, so a big thing about being in a relationship is it's not just about you anymore, right? So the ability to not be selfish is also a big sign of a healthy relationship. When two people be can both think about the other person and not only themselves, right? So those are some of the things I think of right now that are kind of signs of a healthy relationship. And again, you have all your classic ones too, like you still go out on dates, you still have intimacy. Intimacy as far as talking, intimacy as far as sex and things like that, right? So all of those things are important. But I think the ones that I talked about before are kind of big ones.
So I just wanted to clarify, you mentioned that it's important to communicate, right? And you said that people argue, but the point is not to continue arguing, but to stop it and solve the problem together, right? So even in healthy relationships, people argue. Is it correct?
Yes. So we had we had some big research done here in America by the Gottmans. They're called the Gottmans. They're a couple, and they've done a lot of research on marriage, on relationships, and their big finding is that healthy couples and unhealthy couples, there's no difference in how much they argue, how many problems come up. Because healthy couples still argue about things, right? It's not a difference in the amount of problems, but like I said, the difference is they can talk about it and get out of the problem faster. And unhealthy couples, they can't resolve the problem, and that problem goes into the next problem, and the problems keep getting bigger and bigger. Right?
In this case, is it necessary if, for instance, two people in the relationship, they cannot stop arguing, is it necessary to visit a psychotherapist together?
I always recommend it. I recommend it. At the minimum, I would say read books about relationships. There's a lot of good YouTube video content that's qualified people who are psychotherapists, who are doctors, who have giving out good information about relationships now. So, at minimum, I would say read books and watch videos online about relationships. But if it's a problem that they can't resolve on their own, I definitely recommend going to see a therapist.
Oh, one other thing that I wanted to ask you about. So, for instance, people don't argue, right, in the relationship. They seem to be happy. They have intimacy. But at one point, like on unconscious level maybe, or on somatic level, the body might tell if something is wrong. Is it true or not?
It can for sure, right? So what we don't want to do though is we don't want to assume that something's wrong, right? We don't want to try to we don't want to go with that, because that somatic feeling can come from a lot of places, right? So for example, let's say I have a history of being abandoned as a kid. Let's say my parents abandoned me, right? If I'm in a healthy relationship, I can sabotage that relationship because things that person does makes me feel like they're abandoning me, but really it might just be how they cope with stuff, right? So that somatic feeling can be a lot of different things. So what you want to do, one is we have to be in a healthy relationship, we have to know ourselves very well, right? We have to know what our triggers are, right? We have to know the things that we lack, the things that we need to work on in life. We have to know that, right? The second thing we have to do is we have to ask, right? So let's say if I'm getting this feeling that something's wrong, then I ask my partner, hey, I'm having this feeling, something wrong? How are you assessing the relationship? Well, like check in with each other, right? That's a part of communication, right? Because again, you can be feeling like something's wrong, and I could be just having a bad day at work, right? Something like that. Or there could be something really wrong. We don't know, but we have to ask. We have to talk about it and bring it up, right?
So I wanted to ask a deeper question about this. You said that to be in a healthy relationship, people should recognize what issues they have prior to the relationship, right? So the question is, can unstable people, so people who didn't work on their issues, who didn't go to a psychologist at any point of their life, can they build a healthy relationship together or no?
Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, unstable can look like a lot of things, but I would say yes. However, they would have to get to a place in their life where they're willing to work on themselves, right? Because if I'm carrying with me unhealthy coping skills, if I'm carrying with me hurt from my past, if I'm carrying with me a lot of negative traits, then I'm gonna bring that into the next relationship, right? So anyone can change, right? Anyone can work on themselves, but they have to be willing to. They have to be willing to look at themselves and say, okay, I'm ready to change, right? Um, so I think they can, but it's going to take a lot of work.
And there is, this myth, especially in our culture, that if you don't love yourself, then no one will love you, and especially in relationship. Is it true?
Um, I think in some ways it can be true. It kind of, I don't know. I think that's a tough question because every situation's a little bit different, right? But I do think you have to want something good for yourself, right? Again, you have to you have to be willing to say that you want something better, right? And so that comes from a place of loving yourself, right? And it doesn't mean that we have to be perfect, right? We can still be flawed. We can still have problems that we're working on. But if I say, you know what, I'm willing to love myself enough to change, I'm willing to love myself enough to maybe not accept abuse from someone, right? I'm willing to love myself enough to set boundaries with people, right? I'm willing to love myself enough to ask for things that I deserve in life, right? In a respectful way. Then that are those are things that I think, yeah, we definitely have to start from a place of self-love in order to do that, right? But that doesn't mean all my problems have to be solved, right? That doesn't mean I have to be perfect before I go into the next relationship. I just have to start from a place where I love myself and I want something better for myself now.
It is also said that, for instance, if you are 16 or 17 or, in early adulthood, that you cannot build serious relationships. Is it true, or there is some love ingredient that begins in this age?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think now in our time, I think it would be hard, right? Because it's just, there's a lot of different factors that go into like being seriously committed. I think it can happen. Like I know of people who met when they're in high school and now they're married, right? And they have families and they have kids. So it can happen for sure. I think it's really hard though. It takes a commitment, takes a lot of work. You have to be willing um, to grow with each other and change with each other, right? Um, I think it's hard when you're a teenager, when you're a young adult. It's really hard to um, to be, what's the right word I'm looking for? It's hard to be not selfish, right? we're kind of self-centered at that age. We're not fully developed yet in a lot of ways, especially now in our time, right? I think many years ago we had to grow up fast, so that was a factor. But again, I think it can happen. It takes a lot of work, just like anything else.
But what if one partner is much older than the other one? Is it healthy?
As far as if one is not an adult, yeah, I think that's not very common here in America. Actually, if somebody is a teenager, right, and the other person is an adult, that's against the law here. So, yeah, I don't really recommend that because, again, you have somebody who's more mature. They can manipulate young people's minds easier, right? Um, so I think that would be kind of, especially in America, that's not okay.
Okay. So I think that I'm done with all these basic questions, and I think that there is very important question. So we were talking about healthy relationships and serious relationships, but what if two partners realize that their relationship is unhealthy, but they try to make it healthy, but it doesn't work out? Should they just give up, or there's some way out of it?
Again, I mean, it depends, right? I think every couple is different. One of the things you have to decide is, are both people willing to work on the problem, right? And the problem is not like me trying to change my partner, right? The problem is me trying to change me. The problem is trying to work on how I can communicate better. And my partner is doing the same thing, right? So anything can change, but again, if it comes to a point where there's more damage than good happening in the relationship, if it's coming to the point where one person or both people don't want to work anymore, then I would say, yeah, it might be healthy to start to part ways.
Is an unhealthy relationship always an abuse, or they're different?
No, yeah, that's different. Abuse is different. You can have an unhealthy relationship and there not be abuse, right? So it can just mean that they stopped communicating with each other, right? There's no intimacy. They're living separate lives like roommates and not like a couple, right? That's an unhealthy relationship, but there's not necessarily abuse there, right? So it doesn't always have to have that. But I would say if there's abuse, and physical abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, that's unhealthy. That's an unhealthy relationship all the time.
I saw one post today, with regards to Valentine's Day, and couples shared their secrets of healthy relationship and this, like how to build intimacy. And there was advice to sleep separately, during the week and sleep together during the weekend. Have you heard of this, and what do you think about it?
I haven't heard of that one. I recently heard of couples sleeping separately. I mean, again, I think every couple is different, right? So if that works for that couple, then cool, that's good, right? But if one person wants it and the other person doesn't, and then that's not good, right? So both people have to agree. Both people have to feel good about it. Um, but yeah, every couple is different, so different things can work for different people, right? I think for me personally, that probably wouldn't work for me, right? But for someone else, it might work good, so that's cool.
I am done with my list of questions actually.
Okay.
So I'm just thinking of anything I can ask because it's a big chance for me.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you are talking about relationships, how did you get to the point that you got interested in couple therapy?
You know, initially I just started wanting to work with families and individuals. When I first started doing therapy, I really didn't like couples therapy just because you have two people in the room and they're arguing and they're fighting and it can be intense, right? However, I think just in my own relationship problems and life and things like that, it really started making me dive more into reading about relationships and and research about relationships, and I really started to have kind of empathy for couples. It's interesting to me how when you're seeing a couple and they are kind of working through their problems in front of you and they can kind of change and connect with each other better. It's a really good feeling to help them. So I think really probably what got me interested in couples work and couples therapy, couples research is probably me wanting to be in a good relationship myself, right? Me wanting to have more healthier relationships. And so I think that was the biggest thing that kind of got me wanting to work with couples.
And for now, are you only a couple therapist or do you do other therapy,
Yeah, I see
like private ones?
individuals. Yeah, I see couples, individuals. I also see families. Um, so yeah.
By families, you mean parents and children?
hmm Yeah, parents and children. hmm
It sounds very complicated.
Yeah, yeah, it can be. It can be. But it's fun. It's interesting. It's different than individual therapy, for sure.
So I guess, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, I think I would say, we're talking about healthy relationships. And I would say again, I know I already said this before, but the to, biggest thing I've learned about healthy relationships is you have to be willing to look at yourself, right? You have to be willing to look at you and know when you're wrong. You have to be willing to look at yourself and communicate when you feel like something is wrong, right? Those are the biggest things. We have to be willing to work together, right? So when you're in a relationship, it's sometimes when I meet with couples, it's like they're against each other, right? They're fighting against each other, right? But you have to be willing to say, okay, the problem is not my partner. The problem is not me. We have to come together as a team and attack the problem together, right? And so a lot of times when we're hurt in a relationship, when we get hurt, then we tend to go into our defense and then we tend to will be looking at the other person as the problem, right? But when we're really hurt in a relationship, we have to be willing to look at ourselves and say, you know what, even though I'm hurt, this is still my partner, and we're going to work together to figure out this problem, right? And if I don't know myself well, then I'm going to be hurt, and then I'm going to go into my defense, and I'm not going to recognize what's happening, right? I'm just going to be kind of attacking because I'm hurt, right? Or I'm going to shut down because I'm hurt, right? A lot of men shut down in relationships because there's a lot of conflict, and so instead of dealing with it, they shut down, they close off, right? So you have to know that about yourself. You have to be willing to work on you, and again, even if you're the type of person that closes down, you have to challenge yourself to open up, right? So yeah, those are my big tips on relationships, is to really know you, really be willing to work on you. And I think any relationship can work if you have that kind of mindset.
Thank you for this summary. I guess right now I understand what to do in my relationship.
Cool. I'm glad to help.
I have the last question because I wanted to make a post about this life. So maybe do you have any recommendations about the books that people can read about relationships?
Yeah, for sure. Yes, we do tend to shut down, for sure. So again, we got to open up. We got to be willing to work on that. So, but yeah, some books. What I would recommend, I know it's an old book and some people don't like it, but it works every time for me. Every couple I see, this book works, and that is Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, by Dr. John Gray. There's some very good, helpful tips in that book about how to manage problems in a relationship. So that book is really focused on when you're having a problem, how men and women react different to that, and how you guys go work together to solve problems, right? Another book that you want to look up, I think it is called 7 Secrets to a Happy Marriage by John Gottman. And then my mind is drawing a blank. I think that's all I could think of right now, but if I think of more, I'll send you a message with some more books.
I will text you anyway because I will forget the titles and I need correct names.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much for spending some time with us here.
Yeah,
and I know it's
no
late
problem.
night at your place, so I'm very glad that you had a chance.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Always great to talk to you.
Thank you.
All right, have
Bye.
a good day.
You
Bye.
too. Have a good night. Bye.